Awakening in the dawn of light, silence fades away. Cocooned, we walk out to a cliff by the sea. Gulls soar to lofty heights. All that we are has taught reverence for the truth, the virtue of light. We aspire to gain the lofty heights. Then, not all at once, we change. The lofty heights are no more. Science is not in heaven. It is all around us.
Hello, I'm Danna O'Connor from KUNR, your public radio station here at UNR, and I'm here on behalf of the Northern Nevada Science Coalition. Today we're chatting with Jens Redemann. He's an atmospheric scientist and a director of the Remote Sensing Group at the Bear Institute. That's the Bay Area Environmental Institute in Ventura, California. Welcome, Jens.
Thank you.
Now, Jens, I'm not a scientist. I'm a big fan of scientists, and I like a science groupie. Can you tell me what your work is, what it involves, and why it's so important?
Okay. Well, I'm at the Bear Institute, as you said. Bear Institute was founded in the mid-1990s to provide a holding tank for scientists who were about to become civil servants at NASA Ames Research Center. I specifically work with the role of aerosol particles. Those are tiny little particles suspended in air, and their roles on the radiation balance, the kind of radiation that we get from the sun, and the kind of radiation that goes out back to space from the sun, from the Earth. And we measure those particles with a lot of different methods and try to determine what role they might play in climate.
Now, you've been doing this work with airplanes, measuring things in the atmosphere for over 25 years. What changes have you seen from then to now?
Well, the instruments have become much more sophisticated. Our first instrument that we built looked very much like R2-D2 from the Star Wars series, and it also turned its head and looked at the sun. It tracks the sun just like our current instruments, but it only had 6 channels, so basically 6 colors at which it could look at in the solar spectrum. It also had some technological problems by which there was a cable hanging from it, and if the aircraft took too many turns in one direction, that cable would wind up, which is very fun in a very big research aircraft if you're standing on a ladder and trying to unwiggle a cable that's twisted itself up
We should explain these things sit on top of the aircraft.
That's
so
correct. Yeah,
they're very
just
vulnerable.
like R2-D2 actually. They look out the top, and some part of it sticks into the aircraft, and there's a cable that hangs down. With the second iteration of the aircraft, that was done away with, and it has no longer cables that wind themselves up. But that's sort of from a practical point of view, one of the advances that we have done.
How could people improve their gathering of information so that they're informed about what's going on with climate change?
Well, I'll talk about a little bit of that today. I think there's a lot of things that could be done. I do believe it needs to start with scientists. I do feel that as a community we're doing a rather poor job of communicating with the public, both in terms of our language and in terms of how relatable we make the information that we provide. There's a lot of information that people can choose to separate from emotionally, intellectually. The other side of the coin is people want to be separated from the problem.
They're in denial, maybe?
To some extent, that might be true. But I also do believe that change is difficult. Change is difficult for everybody, and so coming to the realization that something may need to change is difficult. So as long as I have an emotional out of that dilemma, I will generally, I think it's human tendency to take the out over the more difficult path of change.
Do you think humans will be able to adapt to climate change?
When you say humans, I would say as a whole, no. In civilized, high technology countries, yes. You look at the Netherlands, they have long built a big dike around their country because their country is small enough and they have the resources to do so. There are some parts of the world where people will not be that lucky and they will not adapt. They don't have a chance to adapt to the rapidity of climate change. For the average American citizen, yes, we will adapt. I don't see why we would not, to the extent that we can. Globally, there may be pieces of the puzzle that we will say, well, there's some things we cannot adapt to. The changes may be too large for us to adapt to. But it's frankly not my area of expertise. I like to refer to climate modelers to tell me the forecasts and the way, if I may give you a little bit of background, the way it works or the way we look at our activity is that we provide information to climate modelers that help them tune their models. To judge the quality of their forecasts is slightly outside of my field of expertise.
Well, let's go back.
Okay.
Now, you are an atmospheric scientist, a PhD. What made you first want to become a scientist?
I saw that question on your questionnaire, and I honestly cannot pinpoint one single event.
You've always been a science guy?
No, I was bored by science for a long period of time, by the details. I love the idea of hard work leading to an outcome. Maybe that's part of my German heritage, but you know, if it's not difficult, it can't be worth doing. So science always struck me as one of those areas where you put in a lot of effort over a long period of time and you have a rewarding outcome, scientifically or otherwise. I do remember, I was sort of a sports jock in high school, and I do remember having questions of how my shot put ball would go a little farther if I used maybe just the right angle, and I could outdo some maybe bigger guys or something. So I probably was thinking more scientifically about everyday life occurrences than other people, but I can't really say there was that one moment when I said I needed to be a scientist. It sort of all fell together. I learned things about science along the way that really made me warm up to the idea of doing this for a living.
Now, what books or websites or other areas can we go to learn more about the things that you're talking about?
Well, in preparation for my public lecture today, I took a book off the shelf that is called The Science and Politics of Climate Change. It's written by Andy Dessler, co-author Dave Parsons, I believe, Cambridge University Press. It's in its second edition. I think it contains a very nice summary of the understanding of climate change, potential for human impact. And I thought, if nothing else, if everybody would read chapter 3 of that, we'd be a little bit further. Of course, these things always work on a personal level. I happened to serve on a proposal panel review with Andy Dessler recently, and I thought he had a great way of communicating. That's why I bought the book, and sure enough, it was. I believe it's a well-written book, very much well-referenced and founded in science.
We've got homework, chapter 3 from Science and Politics of Climate Change.
That's it.
We're talking with Jens Redemann. He's here at the UNR campus on behalf of the Bear Institute, an atmospheric scientist. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your work with us. We appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.